this as a no-code way of learning about Gen AI and fine-tuning of LLMs, you do see that having coding knowledge or knowledge about how to instruct machines to do something actually plays a big part, right? So it goes back to this quote where Gen AI will not replace humans, but humans with AI will replace humans without AI. I think they have all demonstrated that in that sharing, right? Through the use of AI, they made themselves superhuman individuals to train a fine-tuned model. The other insight I had was what I shared earlier, which is such sharing is really very, very rare. So that's the reason why we sort of anticipated that they would share very precious knowledge and information. So we will be sharing this with the broader community as well. The intent is to uplift the capability of the community as well, right? So season 2 quality will be much higher, right? Today we hardly hit. You get 40% win rate, 50% win rate. You are among the top. Hopefully next year we'll see win rates in the 80-90% range to be in the top 5. I think the important thing is we all upskill as a community, and hopefully future winners like those in the audience will also come back and share back with the community. Right. So Jiaowei will host the Q&A.
Thank you, Rick. Right. So for the Q&A session, right, basically we have a list of questions. So because of time constraint, we won't be able to go through all the questions. So I have filtered the list according to the most upvotes. So basically, okay, for the first question, right, we would like the winners to help to share their experience with this question. Can each finalist estimate their overall cost in terms of Singapore dollars for using the tools they had, like for API calls, licenses for software, etc. Maybe we can go down the road, starting with Sheila. Yeah.
So the bulk of my costs came in the initial stages when I was still using O1 Preview. And I didn't keep a very close eye on that cost. So it grew pretty exponentially because I was sending API calls like with code. I spent about $300-400 Sing dollars just on API calls. But don't worry, don't worry. Software, I'm not sure what you guys meant.
I asked that question, but did you have to purchase any operating system or application or anything?
No, I code on my local machine. I know Swee Heng used Google Colab, which is free, but I code locally on my MacBook. I just download VS Code and I code for free.
Yeah, so I spent $0. So I had the idea to use the Open AI API, but because my strategy was to have long response length, right? So if you go and see the Open AI pricing, right, the more tokens you send and the more tokens you get back, right, the higher the cost lah. Then when I calculate, right, okay lah, never mind lah. I don't want to spend any money lah. Yeah, so basically everything free, data set also free. The party rock was quite generous in terms of how many call you can make to it. So actually, you can maximize it like what Swee Heng did to kind of amend remix it and amend it lah. Yeah, software also to have. I also use like VS Code lah. It's basically just an IDE, or you can download like Jupyter Notebook, or which can just be on your laptop. If your laptop is not powerful enough, Google Colab lah. And I think there are plenty of open source stuff that you can try. Yeah.
Yeah, for me, the software I use was also VS Code. Then I use Python to automate the generation of answers. And then for my 3,000 plus, in total I spent maybe about $5 only. Yeah.
For me, I've access to paid accounts, company account, so I just didn't bother about the cost at all. So, but for my case, I spent $0.
Okay, I spent mostly on the cost from 4.0, and of course later on realized that 4 mini is not cheaper, 10 times cheaper. So it total about $100. And I didn't make a loss because I got 150 out of the computer. So it's a net win.
Yeah, don't use O1 preview, guys. Or keep a very close eye. I think I misspoke just now. I think it's about 10 times as expensive as 4.0. And then if you use 4.0 mini, then that's 100 times more expensive than 4.0 mini. So that's
Sheila mentioned earlier on that if you actually prompt your 4.0 mini very well, it actually gets very good performance anyway. So maybe that's one approach. You know, like write very good prompt for 4.0 mini and you still keep your cost very low.
Okay. Thank you, Venus. For the next question, I believe is directed to Sui Heng. Sui Heng, can you share with us why are you called Papa of AI?
No, it's not our AI, it's Papa Mute. Have you all searched for it online? It's an MTV actually.
It's an MTV by a Belgian singer, and it's about his father. His father like kind of don't bother about him and start abandoning him. So in the MTV, the singer himself portrays the father, and so he just sit in a chair every day. And then the child will walk around him like, oh, what are we going to do today? Nothing. So he'll go outside and then he'll look at other parents, and the mother will teach the daughter to dance, and then the father will teach the son to do magic tricks and so on. So it's like, the MTV itself is his own reminder to himself to be a better father. Okay. On the other hand, I realized that I use it for my other competitions before, because basically
Dear grandparents, parents and children, join us to create personalized craft papers badge for your grandparents. It's a heartfelt keepsake they will treasure forever. Join us from 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. at Level 5 Program Room. This program is suitable for age 4 to 6 years old. See you there!
So the other reason I use it for other competition as well is that my wife and my kids like the song. We play a lot in the car, so kind of like, okay, I end up using it. Then after this competition, and I realized that the whole MTV is actually very relevant to this competition. Because at the end of the MTV, right, the boy went to sit down beside the father, and he becomes like wooden like him like that. Which is a reflection of what we do to our LLMs. The child is like the LLM. If you give it very bad data, right, you end up bad like the child. You know, like don't do much, right? But if you have to teach it a lot of things, then you end up very creative like the other kids. So yeah, so that's.
Thank you, James. For the next question, so the question asked is, given the large number of API calls to ChatGPT, do you all encounter throttling or cap on the number of calls based on ChatGPT imposed limits? If yes, how do you all work around it? Example, just wait it out or schedule it. Maybe we can start with Sheila first. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so over the API, there are rate limits imposed by OpenAI. The rate limits differ by the tier of your account on OpenAI. The more you spend with them, the higher tier you are, the higher your rate limits. So actually I spend a lot of them, so my rate limits are very high. But the tier 1, you probably will encounter throttling. What this means is in your code, it will just error out and it will say rate limit exceeded, try again in 1 minute. So you have to implement try except clauses in your code to catch these, and then make your code sleep for 1 minute and then make it continue so it can auto run without you watching it, you know. I had a related pretty big practical tip. You realize I said I'm sending 1,000 API calls to OpenAI because I have 1,000 questions. The knee-jerk reaction is to do this synchronously, which means wait for one response to come back, then send the next one, wait for that to come back, then send the next one. But there is a way to get around this, and it's pretty magical. So typically people would use the OpenAI client, but did you know they have an asynchronous OpenAI client as well? Also made by OpenAI. It's the same models, everything, but it's asynchronous. What this means is you do it in parallel. So I use the asynchronous one instead, which means I send 1,000 calls in parallel, hitting the same model, and I get all of them back within less than 1 second, because it only takes the time for one API call to return, and then it all goes at the same time. And then afterwards, you know, I spent a lot of money because I actually tried to increase the size of my data set to 10,000. And then I sent 10,000, asynchronous in parallel calls to OpenAI, and I got all of them back within 1 second as well. So that's how you can really iterate and scale very quickly.
Yeah, so like I said, I didn't use the API, but I think if you go to the OpenAI API site, right, I think there's two mode also. One mode is when you call, it will just return you the response. The other one is kind of like a batch API, which you call, right, but they don't return you the result immediately. They will return you after a certain X amount of time. Maybe on OpenAI site, they will schedule according to the demand across. So that, right, the cost is much lower. So I suggest if next year, if you are going to try, probably you all can try the one that is like instant, right, with just a few calls, just to see whether the response is what you want also. Because you don't want to have a case where you straight away go into batch mode, and then you wait maybe like 1 hour, and then the answers all come back of 1,000 answers that are like not what you actually are looking for. So I think it's a good balance, maybe as a strategy next time if you are trying, do a few calls, and then once that's like what you are looking for, you can try the batch one, which I think is half the price of like if you're calling it live.
Yeah, so for myself, I didn't really encounter any issues with the OpenAI, the API. So it was quite smooth. Yeah, no errors for me.
Same with Sarah, I also don't have much problem with the cap of cost.
When I started, I hit the limits like Sheila said, but you just have to do it a few times. You spend more money with them, and they are kinder to you. But the funny thing about my account is that somehow you only charge me in chunks of $5. So okay, that's quite reassuring. For some reason, if I set $10, it failed. My credit card failed. So it's always like $5. So it's feel quite safe. It's like you won't overspend, and you have to watch your cost really. It's like, because if you forget something, it can go up. That Andy said as well. There's a batch API, and I think nowadays they're even pushing things for like cache cost. Like if you have your query that's more than 1,024 tokens, and you don't change the front part, that part actually doesn't go into your cost. They kind of like basically have a cache internally where they keep track of this, so they just reuse whatever they have computed before, and that saves you money as well. So yeah, there are a lot of things you can play around with. It's quite deep technology actually.
Also, there's multiple rate limits, not just limit on how many times you can call the API, but also limit on the number of tokens you can send per minute. So if you call it once, but with the max tokens threshold, then you can only make one call in that minute. So just have your code catch all of these, and then auto sleep, and then auto continue after 1 minute. Then you can even run things overnight, and it just all goes auto without you ever checking again.
Thank you. Due to time constraint, unfortunately, we have to come to the end of the Q&A session. Now I'll hand the time over to Jeremy from NLB.
Thanks so much to the panelists today as well. Yeah, really